and it's wet. It's not a day we'd normally come down to the plot. We're giving it a miss because it's, well, started raining mid-morning. But we had a meeting with the men from, how did they say it?
Corteva.
About our...
Or was it Corteva? Corteva, I think.
Anyway, with the men from that place to talk about our contaminated grow bag compost. We're not going to stand in the rain and discuss what they had to say. We'll do that somewhere in the dry, but we'll have a look around the plants as they are now, as they had a look at them and did in fact confirm it's more than likely.
Straight away, wasn't it?
Yeah, straight away, no doubt that it's
hormonal weed killer damage.
Yes, that. So with that, I'll have a look. I'll show you how the tomatoes look just at the minute. So they've been a real mixture, haven't they, growing in and out of this contamination. So this plant that was the first one in at one stage had no contamination whatsoever, but now it's one of the worst.
The leaves are curled.
Yeah. But this is what they consider typical damage, that the weed killer goes for the new growth in the plant.
It disrupts the way that the plants grow, and so it sort of manifests itself really first in the new growth, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then there's a sort of, the next one in that grow bag is not really too bad. If we have a look at the new growing point on that one, it's not really that bad. But then you can see where this one's had some damage and not recovered.
And up at the top.
Up at the top again, there's some signs that all is not well.
In fact, this was one plant that they took.
I mean, the
the
other thing is you can see, can't you, where the leaves have been affected and they just don't recover.
That one's really twisted.
Yeah. And then these...
Look back here, look.
Yeah. These plants are the ones that were badly affected early on, and this grow bag has now had 2 samples taken from it, hasn't it? Because one went to Levington's.
Who haven't even acknowledged that they've received it 10 days after the event.
And then Corteva have taken another one today.
Corteva.
Oh, yeah. and they've also taken one, haven't they, out of this bag.
The one with
you,
the one with the
the tomatoes haven't got much compost left to grow in now.
But those ones there, they're just not making any effort at all, are they?
Well, they are, but they're growing really oddly. I keep taking these main side shoots out that keep growing from the bottom, but as soon as I do it, they just send another one up. But
when you look
they're
at
really twisted.
The height of those,
yeah, I know, they're doing nothing.
To the others.
But I don't know whether that's because they keep doing this and sending another one from the bottom, but I can't get them to stop. It's not normally a problem.
That has got cupping as well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
In fact, it's taking these a long time to... I would think that grow bag's been one of the worst affected.
Yeah, I think it has, yeah.
Interestingly, See,
you don't know either.
Corteva suggested that we actually contact the people who we bought the grow bags from as well, not just Levington's. And they do sort of stress that it is important to let them know when there are these sort of incidents, because if they're unaware of it, they can't do anything to try and put things right, can they?
No, the other thing he said was that sort of when they look at things, if it's just like a one-off, then they probably don't do anything about it. It just treat it as that's exactly what it is, a one-off.
Yeah.
And the story ends there. Whereas if they get lots of complaints, then they'll look into it. I hadn't noticed that one there. Look at the state of that leaf there.
They did say, didn't they, there seems to have been a spike this year.
Yeah.
But that could well be because people are actually looking out for it more, that they're aware of it rather than just putting it down to, well, our tomatoes have grown funny, it must be something to do with the weather, or I've watered them too much or not watered them enough.
Anyway, they were here for what, 3/4 of an hour?
What time is it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, about 3/4 of an hour.
We had a good chat, and we'll fill you in on a bit more detail.
They're going to let us know what the results of the testing is, but it could take a few weeks, as you would imagine.
Yeah. So we'll go through the questions we asked. Yeah, they were. Yeah,
very helpful.
They didn't. I thought they might come and say, "Oh no, it's nothing to do with us.
No,
something else."
Came in and straight away it was. Yeah, that's it. That's hormonal damage. And if anything, they sort of, well, confirmed what we thought, didn't they? That it would be Clopyralid that was to blame rather than aminopyralid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're here in the garden greenhouse now. We keep checking these plants with some amount of trepidation, wondering whether these are going to succumb to the same problem as we've had on the plot. But they seem to be doing okay. They're in the same grow bags, well, not the same grow bags, the same brand of grow bags as we have in the plot greenhouse, from a different garden centre, but they're the same, still Levingtons. While Corteva was with us the other day, they confirmed that Levington use roadside green waste as a component of their grow bags, their compost, which means they take the waste from green bins or bins that the council provide to put garden waste in. We have one, but we don't think our council use our waste in the same way, because Corteva did tell us that if your waste is being used for compost making, you're supposed to get a leaflet telling you exactly what you can and what you can't put in your bin. And we haven't ever had such a leaflet. So we feel okay at putting any sort of diseased or any type of plant material that might contain pesticide into the green waste bin. Thinking about it though, I think I'm going to contact the council and ask them just what do they use our garden waste for, because who knows, maybe they do sell it on to compost makers and haven't leafleted us. Wouldn't be the first time that the chain's broken down, would it? So that's my next step. Just going to pop into the summer house now and tell you a bit more about our meeting with Corteva. So see you in a minute.
We've now had time to think about yesterday's meeting with Corteva. As you'll know from the first part of this video, it was pouring down with rain at the allotment. So we thought we'd finish it off today in the garden, but it's blowing a gale, so we're trying to find somewhere out of the gale force wind, so hopefully the summer house will be okay.
As long as you can't hear the water trickling into the pond, we should be okay.
Yeah, hopefully so. So I think the first thing is that it is safe to eat the produce that grows on or grows in this contaminated compost.
The active ingredient, Clopyralid, binds to cellulose in the plant, and as humans we don't have the right
Right, what?
What are they called? Those things that amino acids.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Come on then, that'll be alright.
The right amino acids to break down the cellulose.
So whatever weird shape you get, it's supposedly safe to eat it. The other thing I wanted to know is what we did with the stuff we've got now. We've got bits of tomato plant you're cutting off now, the leaves. What do you do with them? What do you do with the plants when they finish growing? And what do you do with the compost when you want to get rid of it? Because we normally just add the compost onto some beds on the allotment to improve the soil down there.
We've been doing that for years, haven't we?
Yeah.
And it has made a difference.
So the answer is, I think, that the stuff you cut off the tomato plants now is full of hormone weed killer, and the best thing to do with it, believe it or not, is put it back in the council bin rather than you try to deal with it. Then it, what?
It's maybe not full of it.
Well, no, but I mean, he did say that there's not a lot, didn't he? Now that if it's in a really high dose, it just kills your plants basically, because that's what it is. It's a killer, isn't it?
You said it looked like a mild contamination, but mild contamination on susceptible plants causes quite a lot of damage.
Yeah. So his advice with the grow bags was to put them on a bed that won't be growing susceptible plants next year. So brassicas would be ideal. So ours is going to go on a bed that we will be planting brassicas in next year. But then it's not quite so straightforward in that the brassicas will take up the weed killer next year.
The plants don't have to have symptoms, do they?
No. So next year it's more than likely that things like Brussels sprout plants will contain the hormone weed killer in the stems. So it might be wise to get rid of those stems once again into the council green waste system and let them deal with it in whatever way they see fit.
He did say, didn't he, that shredding the stems was probably the worst thing to do. And the other surprising thing was that he said farms that grow brassica crops could be using the weed killer on their fields. So it's possible that brassicas that you actually buy from the supermarket or the grocers have actually got this clopyralid residue within them too.
So maybe
Bit
not
worrying.
best added to the composting.
Trouble is there's so much in the vegetables that you buy, so much in them already, isn't there?
Yeah.
Oh, what's a little bit more clopyralid?
Yeah. So I think we then moved on to testing, didn't we, to see if we could do much testing, because they've taken 2 more samples of soil for testing from our grow bags in the plot greenhouse. The tomatoes won't have much compost left to grow in soon in the greenhouse.
He tried to get as near to the affected plants as he could, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because it could well be that if he took compost from elsewhere in the bag, you wouldn't be able to find anything. But even then, because it could be just such a small amount of contamination, it may prove that the tests may prove inconclusive. They may not be able to determine what's there.
We did have a little chat about whether you could grow something in it, didn't we? This bean test or whatever you're going to grow in it. And whilst it's a test that will prove it's there, because the plant will grow and show symptoms, it's far more difficult to prove that anything you've got is free of it, because we've got grow bags with one plant at one end that's okay and a plant at the other end that isn't. So quite how you test for that, I don't know. You can test to prove it's there. A test to prove it isn't there is far more difficult. It's not as simple as just bobbing a plant in and seeing if it grows or not.
The other thing is it could be there, but it's just not released from the plant cellulose yet, because I mean we had our potatoes were affected with aminopyralid contamination in 2008, and the contamination just started in one place. We thought that was it, and then gradually the rest of the row was affected, and other people's potatoes were affected. So it just depends on how quickly the cellulose breaks down. That depends on weather conditions, moisture levels, all sorts of things. In winter, you might not even know you've got it.
I mean, our tomato plants probably grew all right for 3 weeks, nearly a month,
yeah.
in the grow bags, showing no signs. So how long do you leave a plant before it's...
Well, it could have
okay.
been that the weather warmed up, because sort of back in 2008 it was actually in a polytunnel that we first noticed the effects. So, I mean, the other thing with the bean test is he did say that if it's a low level of contamination, the bean will germinate, and it will take its first food, if you like, from the seed, and the cotyledons when they open might look perfect. But as the plant grows and it runs out of food from the seed, it's weaned, if you like, it then starts to take up maybe some of the residue from the chemical, and it's maybe then when you'd actually see that the leaves were distorted. I think when we had a problem with our runner beans, they were okay to start with, weren't they?
Yeah, well, like this year's tomatoes, I didn't think there was anything wrong several weeks after they'd been put in. He did bring up the thing about who we'd complain to and complaining in general, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, he did. He asked if we'd complained to, or if we'd informed the garden centre where we bought the grow bags from about the problem, which we hadn't. But he said it might be a good idea to do that, because if people complained to the garden centre, if customers complained, then they could put pressure on people like Levington, and it's not just Levington, to improve their processes. So if you do have a problem, it is important to complain, because he said that if only one person sends in a complaint, then they can disregard it as just a one-off thing, didn't they?
Yeah, whereas if lots of people complain, obviously something's gone wrong in the system and they need to investigate it. If just one person says I've had a problem, well, it'll just go by the wayside, really.
So it's worth sort of bearing in mind, don't just assume because somebody else has complained you don't need to bother, because you might be
the one that makes all the difference.
You might. More people who complain, the more they realise that there is a problem. So
I think that was it, wasn't it? I think that was about all we had to discuss.
Mm-hmm. So if you do have the problem, complain. Hope you don't have the problem though.
Bye.
Bye-bye.